I have a headache. Just spent the night in the aeroplane from California, so didn't get much sleep last night. But here I am. Glad to see you guys here. Glad to see a lot of old friends in the room. Glad to hear Vance making the appeal. That's good. Get him to give it right up front. We like that. For about the last, I would say, 27 years, this Zakouma story has been kind of brooding. And Richard Ruggiero here in the audience, who works for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, managing, or he's actually I love this title, after having worked in Africa for so long. And now they've given him the title at U.S. Fish and Wildlife, and I'm not sure this is official or not, and I can't find his card, but he's called Chief. So I like that. He's a chief. Chief Richard, yeah. So if you can picture yourself as a Peace Corps volunteer back in 1980, working in northern Central African Republic, and of course you're not supposed to say it when you're a Peace Corps volunteer, but you're all carrying guns, because there's a huge problem in northern Central African Republic, which is that there's this incredible wildlife paradise that covers an area about the size of Texas, a little bit bigger, between the size of Texas and Alaska, that has maybe 130,000 elephants. It has some of the last populations of black and white rhino on the planet. It has millions of antelope. And there is a continual stream of Arab horsemen coming into the park that you're working in, slaughtering wildlife on a scale that is absolutely equivalent to what happened to the buffalo in North America when the white settlers first hit, equivalent to kind of the Pleistocene extinctions in North America, where these guys were coming into the Central African Republic, into southern Chad, into northern Democratic Republic of Congo, Zaire back in those days, and southwestern Sudan, and slaughtering sometimes as many as 50 elephants in one go. And you see this as, you know, a 20-some-year-old, and you start to hate these people, because they are ruthlessly killing thousands and thousands and thousands of animals that you have been spending your days with, watching them playing with their babies. And sorry, we should run the slides. I'm getting into it, so let me first tell you that I'm just going to run slides of the amazing photos that Nick took in Zakouma during our 3-month stint there in the dry season of 2006. And I'll get to Zakouma after I kind of talk about the Central African Republic some more. And this is just some Google imagery of where it is in Central Africa. Nick is, I think, without a doubt, the best natural history photographer on earth, and he has certainly outdone himself in Zakouma. So you're going to get to see a lot more images here than you've seen either in the magazine or in that little video. Could we turn the lights down some, just so people can see these images a little bit better? So here we are in the northern part of Central African Republic, and not only are we seeing tens of caravans of of these Arab horsemen sometimes coming with 80, 100 camels and as many horses, and they weren't using guns, they were using spears, these spears about this wide and about that long. And what they would do is they'd ride up behind the herds of elephants, and the same kinds of herds as we see in Chad, sometimes 800 at 1,000, and the reason they're doing that is for safety. And these guys would just run up on horseback and they hamstring these elephants right in the butt, and they cut the tendon in their leg, and these elephants keel over, and they just keep running after the herd, and they'll hamstring as many as they possibly can. And they got 10 guys on horses doing that, so by the time they're done with the herd, they can have 30, 40 of these elephants on the ground. And then they would come back and take their sabers, they had these swords, and they would slice the trunk so the elephants couldn't get up. And then they would just let them die of exposure, and then come either and hack their tusks out with an axe, or just let them rot for a few days and then just yank the tusks out. And they wouldn't touch the meat. They wouldn't touch the meat at all. And people always say, oh, well, you know, maybe people need to exploit the elephants, because this was outright, you know, if it was people, it would be genocide. It was elephantocide. When they ran out of elephants and rhinos, they started in on the antelope. And the end result was, over a very short period of time, 15 years or so, we saw probably 130,000 elephants disappear from Central Africa. We saw millions of antelope literally disappear from Central Africa. And, you know, we were ringing the alarm bells. We were appealing to the world at large, and the French government and the U.S. government and everybody else, saying, you know, not only are we losing this place that is certainly equivalent to any other great wildlife place on Earth, but we're seeing a very interesting trend emerge. That is, if you look back in history, in the colonial era, what the Europeans did pretty ruthlessly was they stopped the advance of Islam. They stopped the Arab and northern African invasions to the south that were focused on two things: slaves and ivory. And at the same time, Islamization of those populations. And when you look at Central African Republic or southwestern Sudan or northeastern DRC today, you look at it and you think, God, there's hardly anyone living there, you know, and that's why all that wildlife was there. But what you don't realize was that was probably because, and mostly due to, Arab and Wadian and Darfurian incursions into those places for about 300 years prior to 1900, when Europeans killed most of the sultans, and there were sultanates pretty much throughout Central Africa that were advancing south. They colonized those countries, and they pretty much stopped Islam and Arab advance in Africa in its tracks for about 60 years. And so when you think about, you know, here you are, you've got this 300, 400-year history of this kind of colonization, really, of all of Africa. You get stopped in your tracks for 60 years by colonialism, by European colonies in Africa. But then all of a sudden you get independence, and you're on the march again. And people haven't seen this. They haven't put two and two together. But if you're sitting in northern Central African Republic and you're seeing hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these guys coming in, slaughtering hundreds of thousands of animals, you think, man, this what are they going to do when they run out of wildlife? What are these guys going to do